Okay, hi there. We are Novoto Studio, and today we are talking about a spicy topic. It's about unconscious patterns of creativity and how they influence our work. But before we dive into this deep topic, let's have a look on our structure so that you have an impression of what to expect. First, we want to talk about us. Where we come from, how we met, and of course about our studio. And then we will tell you how we recognized our patterns and talk about this journey for us. And last but not least, we will have a look at our workflow. And if we have some time left, there will be a little live demo from Chris. Okay, now let's introduce ourselves.
So, hi guys, Christoph Schramm. And I was born in a small city directly near Berlin. As a child, I liked playing outside and climbing on trees, but then I received my first gaming console and things changed. I was also into BMX riding and I skated a lot. And I also really loved playing ice hockey. But my career came to a quick end because as a kid, I accidentally knocked out some teeth of a neighbor's child. Sorry again for that. So after school, and yeah, that's a picture of my high school prom, I really wanted to study communication design. But unfortunately, my portfolio looked like this. And I earned 0 from 100 creativity points. And I think I know the reason for that. So I applied for a job in an advertising agency, and this is really not a joke. As a kid, I watched the movie What Women Really Wants too many times. Mel Gibson was shown as a charismatic and funny creative director, and the embarrassing thing is I wanted to be like him. But being a creative in an advertising agency looks more like this. So during my career, I spent most of the time trying not to cry when the client described my approach as too artsy or too modern. So after years of sacrifice, constant craving for recognition, and terrible projects like these two, and thousands of unpaid overtime hours, I just couldn't take it anymore. I looked like this. Burned out after 12 years.
Yeah, I'm Sabrina-Jasmin, with a hyphen, because my mother thought this would be super unique and nobody would have the same name like me. But props to her, it worked so far. I was born in Berlin, but in fact it's Spandau. It's on the very edge on the city, and most people refuse to call it Berlin. Later, me and my family moved to Austria, where me and my brother had a lot of fun building igloos and just enjoying our childhood. But when I was 12, we moved back to Berlin, and that's exactly when puberty came along and turned my teenage years into a roller coaster ride, I would say. And by the time I was 16, I had already done so many stupid things that from that point on, I really behaved like a grandma, and that's part of my, that's a core element of my personality since then. And it is also a reason why I gave up my teenage dream of being an actress and decided to become an architect to make a career in a male-dominated industry. So I applied at the Universität der Künste in Berlin, but obviously my portfolio didn't impress them. But fortunately, the Technical University in Berlin saw potential, and most people might think I really liked it there because I studied for unbelievable 12 semesters. And for your information, the regular time is only 6 semesters. So I really had to force myself not to quit because I felt really burnt out after every project. So it was just a matter of time until I had to admit to myself that architecture doesn't fulfill me. And I guess it was right after I saw this picture of me. That was taken during my bachelor presentation, in fact.
So our paths crossed at a significant time in our life. I still suffered due to the burnout, and Sabrina had to deal with a quarter-life crisis, I think. So from the moment we met, we influenced each other a lot. I inspired her to study communication design.
Yeah, and with his help, I gained all creativity points, so props to him and props to me. And I encouraged Chris to leave the advertising world behind, so good for us.
Yeah. We then both discovered Cinema 4D for us, and it became a shared passion. It's all started with basic 3D visuals and endless hours of watching tutorials. But after some years of experimenting and learning, this passion went so far that we founded a studio last year with a mutual friend. Here you can see a picture of us after we signed our first contract for the studio. And you can also see our third founder on this picture, Philip. And here are some expressions, because we didn't waste any time to set up our studio. But what does Novoto actually do? We are a multidisciplinary design studio based in Berlin. We see ourselves as artists and storytellers, and we combine graphic design with 2D, 3D motion design and art direction. We are passionate about doing concepts of movement, lighting, and shapes, and enjoy colorful animations with a strong focus on visual storytelling. But enough talk, let's see it in action.
Okay, to be honest, thank you.
Thank you.
To be honest here, it is kind of a miracle that we are able to do all these projects together, because when a couple turns a shared hobby into a profession, I'm not gonna lie, it's a huge challenge. And every single time we work together, we notice that we pursue very different approaches, working methods, styles, colors, materials, everything. I mean, advertising meets architecture, so what did we expect? Yeah, and we disagreed on many things, but in the end, we can say that all these disagreements were part of our journey, because they enabled us to recognize our patterns. So welcome to the second chapter. And this process started for us when we worked on a new project together, but we had completely other visions for it one more time, in the way of let's make everything abstract and colorful versus how about clean and super detailed. But at this point, no one of us wanted to give up their own strategy and to compromise. And this resulted in us isolating ourselves from each other and secretly looking up our own mood boards and, of course, old projects, just to confirm that we are indeed good designers and nothing is wrong with us. And personally, I find looking at my own work quite nerve-wracking most of the time, because looking through my portfolio feels like looking in a mirror. You always discover something that feels strange or off or is not that perfect. And you always hope that nobody will recognize it. But then my awareness shifted at some point, and I didn't focus on the strange things anymore, but more likely I saw similarities between projects that I never had noticed before. And my first reaction was pure disbelief and concern, and I really asked myself, oh my God, am I uncreative? But in a conversation with Chris, we realized that his work also has strong patterns and that we are both uncreative couldn't be the case. Yeah, but let us explain what we mean by showing you some of our portfolio projects. So in my case, it seems like one part of my pattern is that I really like boxes and think boxes are great. And I will prove this theory by showing you two projects. And one of it is an old project of mine. And I did this animation for an exhibition in an abandoned underground parking garage, I think 3 or 2 years ago. And in the project on the next slide, I will show you in a second, is our latest work, Elevate to Elsewhere. So here we go. Okay, clearly I don't just like boxes because they are boxes. Otherwise I would also do shoe boxes, Barbie boxes, and all kind of packaging designs, I guess. But apparently something really excites me here, and it would be too easy to limit it to the box itself. I find it much more interesting to have a closer look and ask myself, what exactly attracts me here? That my never-ending passion for spaces has influenced me here is undeniable, and I could now analyze further why exactly this type of space inspires me, but this would go beyond the framework of this presentation, so I prefer to say I like spaces for now. But the other aspect that these two animations have in common is the moment of surprise. In both cases, there is a reveal that breaks with the viewer's expectations, like in a good unboxing video, for example. And once I have understood what the catchy aspect is that appeals to me, I even recognize a connection between these two animations and the project we are showing you now. It's named Craftures. So in Craftures, it is also the dramatic reveal that makes this very basic animation interesting, I hope. Whether it's a dynamic tracking shot or a falling curtain or a super fast rotation, it's all about the transition and of course the staging. But the forms of the sculptures are also something that I keep doing, as I did something similar in our DeepMind project that we will show you in detail later. I simply love the formal language of abstract form work, I would say. To create them, it takes me multiple steps. Most of the time it begins with a very simple simulation in Cinema, and then in the next step I drag the geo into a slicer or volume measure, and then I play around and have fun with different modes, subtract or add some other objects, until I get to the point when I'm really happy with the shape. Yeah, and I really love that it almost feels like crafturing something in real life because of all these steps. And yeah, this preference is clearly part of my pattern. But enough from my side, let's have a look what inspires and influences Chris's work.
So I will talk about my own work very soon. But before we go into that, I brought a little experiment. And I hope you guys don't leave me hanging here and work a little bit with me. You can see two basic shapes here, and the association that these shapes evoke in you can give you clues on what your own imprints are. So there are absolutely no wrong answers. What are you guys seeing? Yeah? A camera? Yeah? Photoshop mask? Yeah,
Cool.
nice. What else? Okay, I remember you. What? A turntable, yeah.
Yeah,
Also
cool.
great, yeah.
We already heard PlayStation.
Okay, yeah, keep going, just throw them. Yeah, alpha mask, yeah.
And in the front? Lovely.
Nice.
Okay.
For example, I see my beloved PlayStation or a record player, yeah. So I'm simply fascinated by small aesthetic devices that has a multimedia function. As you can see in the project I did called Machinery, I tried to find out which musical objects I could reinvent and combine them with my usually aesthetic patterns. This project has a very strong recognition value for me, but I already used this concept in an older work. Here you can see the project I did for the music duo Christian Rich. When I became aware of this parallel, the first impulse was shame. I felt caught. But now it's not surprising for me anymore that I use this concept more often because of my patterns. I think humanity has a huge desire for continuity. I hate that word. Of something good. So I see this work like the favorite previous season of my favorite series, or like the next manga of Dragon Ball. So why not embrace this effect and be nicer to your past work, and at the same time develop your creative series? More characters, more scenes, more branches, more storylines. So for this project, I simply didn't want the story to end. And thanks to this understanding, I can also make sure that I don't fall too much into these patterns for future projects. I ask myself whether my influence is in the interest of me or is it in the interest of the project. And of course, for some projects, we also decide to use our patterns less.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. For example, we also have accepted that we prefer maybe certain colors because they simply make the perfect vibe for us. But the awareness of these tendencies is also very important in order to resist them at certain points. And this is actually a very clear and active decision from time to time. And the reason for that is that we want to find our personal sweet spot on this scale here. And the left side of the scale represents fantastic artists like Vincent Schwenk, Alba de Fuente, also an architect by the way, or Valentin Heinrich, who had a fantastic talk earlier this morning. He had FMX and is in the audience. And on the other side are agencies that adapt every style, every trend, every new approach, as long as the client is happy and pays. But we as a studio, we are really into gray values. So we are interested in the nuances in between. So also this gray value is part of our own pattern and therefore part of the identity of Novoto Studio, I would say.
Yeah.
So with all these examples, we have shown you some of our strongest influences. And of course, there are many more, but we don't want to go into everything now. But it might be interesting for everyone to create a visual representation of their own strongest influences, how we did it for us. Because the nice thing is that you can use this as your very unique toolkit for future projects.
And because of our influences, there's often a fear that we are not unique if someone else has the same influence. So it's even more important to see it as a variety of influences as a whole. When you mix them, you can create unique combinations. It's like a construction kit that you can use countless times without getting bored. And if you work in a team and everyone contributes a part of their influences, there are really endless possibilities. Like in the project Bodies Under Construction, where we combined contemporary art with nerd setups, society and feminism. Or as well in this little printer skateboard visual, we combined other aspects of our imprints. And last but not least, our work for Google DeepMind. It's called AI and Society, and it's part of the Visualizing AI project. Let's remind ourselves that I love the aesthetics of retro console and Sabrina loves architecture. With this knowledge, I think it's almost unavoidable that we came to this result. We implemented so many influences from both of us that you could say it was a hell of a passion project. And I think it's the perfect example to demonstrate how we combine our patterns when we work together. But let's see it in action. So the concept of visualizing AI may not be familiar to everyone, so let me give you a quick explanation. Google DeepMind wanted to change the way artificial intelligence is represented. To achieve this, they asked a variety of artists and designers to visualize various aspects of AI, and we are extremely proud to be part of this project alongside such talented people and studios we really admire. It was absolutely clear for us that the look should be bright and friendly with colorful accents. Storytelling was one of the most important features for us.
So we jumped into an intense research and looked for inspiration in various fields, for example, graphic design, modern art, and of course architecture. It quickly became clear that we had very different opinions on what is the most interesting and also the most important part that we should focus on. I was super interested in the environment and focused on creating a base that really represents an open and connected safe space. And I was also super attracted to challenge of visualizing the problem-solving process. And Chris thought about user-friendliness and wanted to have a closer look on the interaction between people and technology. We didn't want to limit each other and decided to just go with the flow and allow us to develop our visions further. We really forced us to have trust in the process, because at this point we already learned that creativity arises from opposites and that we can use this creative potential to our advantage.
Looking back, it was our good fortune that Sabrina and I focused on different aspects and we were able to complement each other. Because the topic we were given was extremely extensive and difficult to capture. Behind the very short title lies a complex concept and an extensive briefing. And to demonstrate you how we managed to work together on such complex topics, we will talk a little bit about our workflow. So our workflow might be a little different from others because our influences also have a huge impact on the way we work and how we approach projects. I would claim that we combined the effectiveness of advertising industry with the conceptual methods of architecture. Our approach is quite interdisciplinary, as we have already mentioned. But let's take a closer look.
So it all starts with a briefing, of course, and the briefing needs to be fully evaluated so that we are able to filter out the most important aspects. And that only works if we have a good understanding and basic knowledge, of course. And once we have filtered them out, we split them up and treat them as separate topics to analyze each of these points isolated. And this is really important to us because very complex topics can be very overwhelming. And there is often a tendency to rush into design approaches without fully committing to the process of idea generation.
It gets exciting when you finished up building your own library and then limit yourself again. So in the next step, we make a selection by picking the things out that feels right. We then combine compatible ideas to create a strong and coherent concept. This usually results in 3 to 5 combinations that we think through in more detail. And at the same time, the first visuals are usually created to test out the look and feel. One of these concepts will hopefully convince us to build the final concept and start working on the storyboard. Storytelling is considered from the very beginning and influences our selection. We only become specific and think from scene to scene once we have made a decision. And the look and feel is something that develops right from the start, but it gets adapted to the final concept. To not just show you a simple graphic, let's have a look at our board we did for Google DeepMind. We call it, by the way, association board and not mood board, because it contains so much more than that. As you can see, we have a library of moods for every imaginable aspect, but there's also space for principles, phrases, physical laws, or movie quotes. There's really no right or wrong. In some cases, it's also possible to think in scenarios or special narrative styles. What generally made us different from other studios is that we start working in 3D space quite late. We only start when we are really sure which direction we want to take. That's why we don't create folders of full different iterations from which the client customer then picks the one they like the best. We see it as our responsibility as designers to make the design decisions and clearly place quality above quantity. Of course, there are exceptions, especially when it comes to passion projects. That's where we let our creativity run free and see where it takes us. We also don't create a new mood board every time for every single project. We have understood that our influences and patterns and interests are not a trend, and that we can be inspired by the one on the same mood board or association board and ideas in the long term. Even one single board can lead us to a number of different projects. And that's why we were able to use the same association board for a different DeepMind project called Cooperative AI. It allowed us to generate new ideas on that. We only added one extra category to adjust the board to the new circumstances.
So in this project, I was thinking of a balanced structure that offers stability, while at the same time, it is still flexible in its nature. And Chris was on fire when it came to the connectors and small details. You could say, I'm the woman for the rough stuff and Chris is the guy for the details, and I think that's kind of cute because we are challenging the stereotypes here. But with this example, we also want to show you how our process sometimes looks, and many would probably not dare to show it because it is kind of embarrassing. I think there's a tendency that designers often show just a picture-perfect end result and sugarcoat the way it takes to achieve this final product. For example, by faking the behind the scenes afterwards. But there are also a lot of students here, and that's why we want to be honest with that and hope to motivate you by illustrating it is a long way down the road for us as well until we have a result that we can present and be proud of. Many, many steps are necessary, and sometimes it looks super crappy until the very last moment, what this example proves for sure, I guess. And please don't get me wrong, it's not always like that, but in this case the process was quite underwhelming. Therefore, don't let the process make you feel insecure and keep going, because your growth and education isn't comparable, in fact, and nobody can rush these things. But let's sum it up now and look at everything as a whole. We think it is incredibly important as a creative professional to understand your own working methods and, above all, your own decision-making processes in order to be able to communicate and also manage them. And I mean this for every aspect of our job. So from association to color decision to workflow. And that's why our advice to everyone is find your gray value, recognize your own patterns, and align your workflow to your advantage.
We can't promise that it will make your work easier, but I think it's worth a try because it had worked very well for us so far.
So far. We hope you were able to give you some interesting insights about our self-reflection as designers. And in the best case, we have motivated some of you to reflect your own unconscious design decisions. And yeah, we really appreciated to have the exchange with other designers, like here at the FMX. So cheers to Maxon for this opportunity, and thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think we have time left for our live demo. So let me just quickly end PowerPoint.
On PowerPoint.
So I want to show you today how I built this little keyboard procedurally. It was very important to build it procedurally because we need a lot of them and all have to look very different. And I will also show you how I managed that the little tic-tacs, they are hand animated, but how they interact with the keyboard, and I have not to keyframe also the interaction. So it is a very basic setup actually. We start with a cube and it has very, very low segments to keep it low poly. I put the cube into a cloner with 5 segments, but I need to split them up so I get the keys for the keyboard. And I put them in a simply Voronoi fracture. So I get different colors and different fractures of this, but I wanted to make it a little bit interesting and I used the matrix for that. And the matrix has nearly the same settings as the cloner, but it has so much more diversity in the x-axis. And the cool thing is I use the matrix as a source for the Voronoi fracture. And as you can see, you will get some different colors which represent different keys. But again, I wanted to make it interesting and I wanted to have different sized keys. And there is this magical little option called geometry glue, which glues based on a pattern these keys together, and you get different sized keys. And the cluster seed is the magic point for this project because you get unlimited different keyboards for that. But they're sticking together. And I used the push apart effector, and I accidentally noticed that when I put the push apart effector into the effectors tab of the Voronoi fracture, they will push apart, of course. But the push apart effector has also a mode called scale apart, and there's the magic. Normally it would look like this, and you say, okay, I can't use this. But if you reduce the strength until 10 or something, it's perfect. And due to the fact it's a MoGraph object, you can manipulate, sorry for my bad English, the whole keyboard. And you can let the keyboard grow with a simple plane effector and a linear field that is animated. You can grow the keyboard or rotate it or explode it. Everything is possible. So now I want to show you how I did that the keyboard is interacting with this little tic-tacs. And that's pretty easy actually. I did another plane effector, which is pushing the whole keyboard a little bit down. And then I use the field to reset it so that it's going up again. And every little tic-tac has its own box field. And the box field is the child of the little tic-tac. So the box field is following the tic-tacs. And then they're pushing the keyboard down. And the last thing I want to show you is, of course, there's a little bevel. You can bevel them to get smooth edges. And the last thing I want to show you is different materials when interacting with the tic-tacs, or the tic-tacs interacting with the keyboard. Now it's all clear glass, but when they interact with each other, they turn red. And this is super, super simple. This is material-based. And I have a material built with 2 different materials. One is the glass material, and the other one is a simple red plastic, just for showcasing. And they are set up in a simple material blender. And I used the color user data I was getting from the fields. Wait a second. Whoops, I can't find it. Fields. If you turn on these color tabs, you get some color information, and that drives the color user data by selecting row graph color. And yeah, that's basically it. Thank you very much for your attention. Hiya, and one last thing. Maxon is so friendly to give you guys one Maxon license. So if you want to participate in the, I don't know what the word is
lottery.
in English. In the lottery, scan the QR code and maybe you get a Maxon license.
A Maxon 1 license.
Oh, a Maxon 1 license. So, are there any questions? I think Karen has one. Oh yeah, we should stand. The lines? Yeah.
Okay, I know what you mean. I think he is meaning the die Lamellen.
Yeah.
I think it was just a simple cloth animation in Cinema 4D. And then after that, I did some thicken on it, and it looks great with the turbulence. And yeah, I think that's it.
Sorry.
Not big magic. I hope you. Yeah, that was the question. Yeah.
Do you have any rules in your collaboration? So maybe you for the rough part.
Yeah.
For the details. Are there any?
Oh yeah, there are a lot of rules. It's a big book of rules, to be honest. And no, it's not always the same. So the tricky thing is that Chris and we do the same things. We are both creatives, and you don't need 2 creative directors when you're on one job. So we have the rule. Einer hat den Hut auf, one has the hat on.
And the other is the little monkey,
Yeah.
doing everything.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
So one of us is making the decisions, and I think that's the biggest rule.
Yeah, and it depends on which we decide who has the head off by coin flipping, or we know the client better or something stuff.
Yeah,
so
that's also important. Yeah.
Yeah, but you need to have someone that is actually in charge. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the lighting setup like to get the clean white look?
Yeah. So in this case, it probably was just one dome light, because we figured out that it was so much cleaner and better that we just have this one source of light. We tried it with some area lights in addition to it, but it wasn't the clean white cube look. And we were impressed by it, because we never thought that something can look good with just one dome light. So, yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm a little nerd and I collect so many materials,
We have a very, very large library.
I built up a very large library, and I can't tell you which smudge, but probably Grayscale Gorilla.
Yeah, but
that's a source to go for smudges.
Normally we'll mix up a lot of different materials, take the roughness from this one and the metalness from this, and
Yeah. Behind. Yeah.
Maybe this was just asked. I didn't hear the question. Do you use many of the presets in the asset browser? And two, what color profile do you guys tend to work with?
The second question, the color profile is the second question. We use ACES, but there is no specific tendency of color space. Sometimes I prefer, or we prefer, to work in sRGB because I know there was a step by Maxon that ACES looks better with or more color accurate, but
there are some problems in the post-production.
Yeah, and sometimes it gets confusing, especially with After Effects. And we both don't use DaVinci. Our third founder uses DaVinci, and so it's sometimes a little clusterfuck to align with perfect colors for the client. So
Yeah, I think we decided project-based.
And what was the first question?
I know the first question.
Okay.
So until now we didn't use a lot of assets from the library, but with the project Elevate to Elsewhere, we had a lot of fun with the asset library from Maxon, so can recommend it.
Yeah, Karan. Yes.
We are not. So I would be the advice receiver in this case, so maybe you have an answer.
I don't know. Maybe believe in yourself. I mean, we are all people and we all make mistakes, and I read a little bit from the presentation because I was so nervous, and then I couldn't read any words, and I was like, but who is daring me, right? I think the Maxon team is fantastic. They teach they teach you how to present, and they give you opportunities. And yes, you grow with the projects and with the things you do.
I think we can say that we can learn from each other in this community, especially in the 3D scene. And it's always a big challenge because I think most of us are feeling like imposters, and there are the thoughts, oh my God, is our work good enough to present it in front of an audience? But I think, you can learn from every presentation and just do it.
Yeah, just do it, Yeah. It's not bad. Yeah.
What was both your ways, like using Cinema 4D as a 3D software? Because like in architecture, you mostly use different softwares. How was your intention that you said, I just want to learn like Maxon?
I would split up the answer. Because as a graphic designer, it's very, very easy to go to Cinema because with the integration with Adobe. So I influenced her a little bit to use Cinema 4D.
Yeah, that's true. So in architecture, I of course used other tools like Rhinoceros, and I still use these things in some cases to build buildings and interior design and things like that. But then I take the Geo and go into Cinema, and he totally influenced me. And it was important for us that this is the tool for professionals until now.
Yep.
And I used it when I studied with the student license, and I never thought about using another software, to be honest, because I'm happy with it.
Yeah. And it gets better every day. I mean, the new simulation and particle stuff.
Yeah.
Quite amazing.
There was a question.
And most of the time it's a deadline.
Yeah, exactly. It's true.
Yeah.
That's totally true, yeah.
But normally I think we say not more than 2 or 3 days of
that's
just
not
brainstorming.
true.
No, that's
really
not true. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we of course set a timeline for every project, so for every professional project, not for the passion projects. There's a problem when
Yep.
you do something for your own portfolio, just for yourself, then you have to limit yourself.
Write your own deadlines.
Yeah, that's a good advice. Yeah, deadlines are important.
Or have a talk at FMX. It's a perfect deadline.
Yeah. Do we have an answer to that?
I don't know. Excuse me? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tough question.
So I think it's super important that you are able to communicate what you are doing in every stage of the process. So it is, when you have a studio, it's not just important to do your work properly and have good ideas, you also have to communicate with the clients, because they have to trust you and they have to see that you are able to recognize that something is multicultural, and that's super important. And I think it is challenging also for us, but it's part of the job. So yeah, I don't know. I hope I can answer your question. Is the question how we manage to get clients? Mm-hmm. Ah, okay. Yeah. So I think this would be part of our research first. So these are circumstances that we would like to figure out when we are at this point. But for now, we didn't face such challenges, I guess. But that's why we think it's super important to have a to take your time to research and look what are the circumstances here with this client, because it's not always the same. It's always something completely new. And we are an agency that wants to do something new for a new client and not doing all the time the same stuff. And I think it's super interesting to have new challenges. So.
Mm.
Okay, sounds interesting.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
But I also like the X story, so thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, some questions left.
Yeah.
What's it like working together on like one Cinema 4D project? Do you like switch back and forth between you two on a scene, or how do you handle it so that the other person isn't overwhelmed by like the note?
Yeah. So every one of us, we have a very, very good structure on our server, thanks to Chris. So in the development R&D phase, everyone has his own folder, and there we have our own Cinema 4D files, and later on we will build up a master scene, mostly with proxies or things like that, and then we bring everything together, all our separate files and ideas, or set up a new file, because in the R&D phase it's getting messy, to be honest.
And when you're in the middle of the project, someone gets the master of the master file. So
Master of the master.
Master of the master file, and you will get the files from the others and put them together, and it's your job that they look good together. Yeah. So I would say that's it. Thank you very much for your attention.